Okay, hi there everyone. Let's see. Okay, hello everybody. Can you all hear me? Oh, I've got a good few of you waiting already actually. Wow, thanks for joining me. Let me just check before I continue that you can hear me loud and clear. Oh, perfect, Evelyn. Thank you so much. Lovely. Okay, thanks for joining me this afternoon. So I'm a couple of minutes late. Do you know what, this afternoon has really run away with me? So much so that I didn't even have a chance to prepare any slides for you today. So what I'll do with the colours and things that I'm using, I've taken photos, so I shall show you those in a second, but I'll also prepare a little reel for you because I've been playing, as you can see, and I'm going to create another colour combination. So, excuse me, I'm going to create another colour combination for you now, but I will document those and show you a little bit later on. As far as the items that I'm using, it's only 4 sets today. So thanks for joining me. Let's see who we've got. Bonnie's here. Okay. And Beverly. Oh, hi, Beverly. Are you all set to craft along with me today, Beverly? We've got Kathy and Evelyn, Marion. Hi, Helen. Hi, Jill. Hi, Mum. We've got Marion and Jean and Sharon. Okay. Have I done something different with my lighting? Yeah, do you know what? I just had a little play with that because with these brighter days, not that it's bright, well, not that it's bright today, it's actually pouring with rain, but I found I was getting a lot of glare from the window because I've got a window here and I've got a window here. I've got 2 windows, so it's a lovely, lovely light to craft in, but it doesn't always translate very well through the camera because I was finding the light, I think, coming from this side has really sort of blown out a lot of the colours. So I've got an extra light on in the corner, and I've just sort of fiddled with the blinds a little bit. So it's looking like I've got quite a good representation of colour. Strangely, the winter is the easiest light for me to deal with when I'm bringing you lives, which is quite strange. But yeah, it just takes a little bit of fiddling today. So I would rather have got that right for you today as opposed to do the slides. But I will do a little reel as well. So thanks for joining me today. What I thought I'd do is play with the Floral Teacup because I know it's something that has been asked for a lot. I've only just got this, so I've literally, my first play with it was this morning. So I've got 3 different colours here. You can see this is the card I'm going to make as well. It's a nice straightforward card, but today I really wanted to focus on the stenciling of the Floral Teacup because it's actually quite a detailed set of stencils. Not hard at all, but sometimes it's it's a set of stencils that you might just need to play with and just get your colours right. So I've gone through a couple of different combinations today. Hopefully I'll try and create a different one for you now. I've also done a little pop-up card for you using the curvy rectangles because again this one came to me at the same time as the Floral Teacup, so I've only just had a chance to play with it today. It's a gorgeous little set actually, the curvy rectangles. It's an A6 set, so perfect if you like making the 6 by 4 inch card blanks. So I just wanted to see if it would make a pop-up card, and it's worked out really nicely today. So if I just close that down, you can see that apart from the teacup, which sort of extends out the limits a little bit, it does make a really nice little lovely shaped 6 by 4 card, or an A6 card I think, isn't it, which you then put into a C6 envelope. So it's a cute little card. I mean, you don't need to make, this doesn't need to be a pop-up card. You could quite easily not have your score line at the front, and you can put all the embellishments flat onto the front of the card and have it as a regular opening card like this. And if you were to do that, then obviously you could take the sentiment from the inside and pop that onto the outside as well. You could put your teacup a bit further into the centre. So yeah, there's a couple of different options. Let's say it's just me basically playing today, so and showing you what these sets are capable of. So I've also created, as I've said, a couple of different colour combinations. This one I wanted to create like a white flower. You know, that's one of the things I do like to try to do, and that's worked really nicely. We've got this one here, we've got the teacup, a slightly different colour, but again I think this works equally onto the sort of the neutral palette of the background that I've used as well. It's a lovely sage green pearlescent card that I have, and it works so well for all of Lisa's dies actually, because obviously the green works so well. But equally, if you go something with a little bit bolder, then that works on the front as well, and that really pops. So these are quite vibrant colours, and that looks really nice too. So what I will do, I'm just going to show you the colour combinations as photos on my phone, because I had to make sure I wrote them down, because honestly you wouldn't have I had pretty much every ink out on my desk this morning. So this colour combination that I'm using now, or that I've shown you here, is painted eggshell for the teacup and the saucer. The foliage is a combination of painted eggshell, garden sage and margarita. And I will put these on a separate reel, because I appreciate you won't be able to see these. And the flowers are a combination of rhubarb jam and Pina Colada. And this one here, it looks slightly more orange, but it really is a base of Pina Colada with the rhubarb jam over the top. So that's worked really nicely. So the next colour combination we have here, very similar. The teacup and the saucer is almond frosting. The flowers are a combination of Pina Colada, rustic coral and coral beach. So it's a really nice combination of the three colours. And then the foliage is a combination of eucalyptus leaves and margarita. Actually, I think I put some margarita in there as well by the looks of it. So that's worked really nice. Then this one here, as I say, I wanted to attempt sort of a white flower. Let me just bring this one to you here, and this one worked really nicely as well. Really makes the foliage pop in the background. And the colour combinations I've used for this one are the cup is antique pink and the saucer is deep ocean, because I really wanted to play with the fact that you can mix and match your crockery. You know, you get your old English tea sets and things, don't you, when you go to cafes where they mix and match, and it gives you a real lovely sort of afternoon tea sort of feeling. So that was what I wanted to achieve with this. And then the flower on the inside is a combination of cobblestones and opaque white. And I've done that on all the flowers that are in here. Then the foliage is a combination of woodland moss, garden sage and cobblestones. So I just wanted to run through those and say, if you watch this back, it's something that you'll be able to sort of rewind and sort of listen to and jot the names down. I will put the combinations under the video in the notes section. And if you keep an eye out on the Facebook group, then I'll do a little reel for that as well. Now I'm just wondering, I haven't gone live on our Facebook group, but hopefully somebody has streamed that in to the page for me. As I say, I think I was playing so much this morning that the time actually ran away with me. And I forgot that obviously then I need to start crafting with you, which I love to do, but then I do forget all the different places that I need to go live. So bear with me, I'm just making sure that we're live in our Facebook group, but I've just had a little look and it's been streamed in by somebody else, so that's perfect. Streaming software, I'm not sure that it's ready. There we are, go live. Post in the group. Right, it's not giving me the option to do that. Okay, right. I'm just going to get crafting. We'll be live somewhere, I think. Okay, the dark card. This isn't Lisa's card. No, it's not. It's a card that I've had in my stash for a really long time. It's a gorgeous pearlescent colour. It's a sagey colour, which goes really well with the woodland moss and the garden sage. It's one of my favourite colours. It's a lovely neutral to have in the background there. So let's get crafting, shall we? So I shall work through the base of the card with you in a little while. I'm going to get crafting with, or stenciling with, the Floral Teacup first. So bringing my Ultimate, I am stenciling onto Lisa's Super Smooth, as always. So let me just leave a couple of these here. So we've got these for a reference. It's always really nice to have for reference to when you're stenciling. I won't use these for a little while, so I'll be keeping them in the stencil folder. And I really must remember to emboss these afterwards, because I'm a great one for forgetting to emboss, aren't I? Particularly on air. For no other reason than my mind is sort of working a couple of steps ahead and I forget to do these things. So the Floral Teacup, it's a set of 10 stencils. It'll be really nice for you to have this as a reference point on YouTube as well. I know a lot of you have been waiting for this. And have a little think and let me know, would you like me to use this on Thursday as well? That will give you 2 videos to go back to, and I create another colour combination, a completely different card, so it might be a really nice sort of a reference point for you. Okay, so let's get going. So stencil number 1, this is where we introduce the colour for the teacup, and I think this really sets the tone for the rest of the project that we're going for. So I'm going to go with Antique Pink for this one. So I shall bring that in. Now when I stencil with this one, the top of the teacup I always aim to be that little bit darker, because you have the flowers that fall over the edge of that, so that is going to create a bit of a shadow. So you don't have to, but my way of thinking, and if you're thinking along the same lines of creating shading, aim to have a darker area at the top of your teacup than at the bottom. Now there will be a slightly darker line here as the teacup hits the saucer, so if you want to also just add a really subtle faint line at the bottom of the teacup, that will also give your teacup some dimension as well, and you can leave that section in the center lighter. Now equally you can go bold and just throw colour at it. That would work equally as well. So although I talk about shading and adding darker areas here and there, Lisa's stencils really are so forgiving that you don't have to worry about that sort of shading if you just want to put bold or solid colour down. So first of all, the first florals we deal with are towards the back of the flowers here. So I think what I might want to do with those, I want the main flower to be yellow in this one in particular. So I think I might go with the rustic coral in the back here. So I'm going to go quite bold with these colours, I think, while you're watching me. I think that works really nicely. So I'm going to put rustic coral in there. Again, I work from where the centre of the design would be out towards the outside. So the area closer to the centre of the stencil will always, in the way that I stencil, be darker. As I say, if you are beginning to think about shading in your projects, that's sort of a really good, effective way of actually thinking about how to create the shading. as opposed, I know you've got to think about light sources and whatever, but I'm thinking that everything in the centre of any project is darker, and as it comes out from the centre it gets lighter. So that's the way that I work my colour sort of intensity, as it were. So that's the rustic coral there. We've got a few bits of foliage there to start coming in, so we'll go bright to start with, and we'll just put in some Margarita in there. Okay, stencil number 1. So stencil 2 is now where we bring in that large flower. So juicy pineapple this time. I am going to go yellow on this one. So this is going to be really bold, and the yellow and pink just work so well together. So first of all, I go round the outside. Again, that gives us the real nice bold outline of the flower. Circular motions as we go in, and then once I'm happy with the colour that I've got around the outside, then I just start using the ink that I've already blended onto the stencil and just start bringing that in. And the more that you work your stencil brush round and round, circular motions, you will add colour to the centre there, and you'll start getting that sort of airbrushed halo look. Now if you find that you're not bringing in any more colour, just pick a little bit more up, put it onto your stencil material first, and then work it into the centre like so. And you can see now, just adding that extra bit of colour, I've filled in that centre of the flower a lot more. But it still gives a sunshine look because we're still quite bright in the middle there. So you can see already that the feel of this floral bouquet is going to be very different. Oh, so let's put that there so you can just see the comparisons as we go along. Can you see? There we are. There we go. And I'll put my stencils over there. Okay, stencil number 3. So we have the centre of our large flower. Now normally I've done that in yellow, but because I've got a yellow flower, I'm going to do a contrast. So rustic coral into the centre there. And we have another flower sitting here. So I think what I might do, I might bring in the what shall I do? Say, I think the trickiest thing about this is choosing all the colours you're going to have. I think I might go the antique pink, as we've got a theme. I'm not going to go too dark with this one, not as dark as I did the teacup. So I'm using a smaller stencil brush, which allows me to be a lot more subtle if I want to be. So I'm adding that colour in along there. So along this edge, I'm going to make sure again that I'm having more ink, so we create that shadow effect. And there's going to be a little bit of a shadow. No, there won't be actually, because this flower is on top of this one, as you're looking at it in the scheme of the arrangement. So I want to make sure that that looks pink, so I'm making sure I put plenty of colour on, but not going, oh, you know, really, really dark. So we take that away. There we are, that looks lovely. So we can see with antique pink, but it's got a very different feel to the teacup down here. So we bring the next one in. Here we can see we have the saucer, and then we put the detail onto the flower that we've just stenciled there. So I'm going to come in with the antique pink again to give that detail on the flower. Then once I've done that, I'm just going to pick up the brush for the juicy pineapple. I'm not going to add any more ink, but I'm just going to add that over the flower. So that's going to give that a slightly more of a corally look, but not as bright as the rustic coral that we've already used. Now I think I might do a grey saucer here. So I've got the Cobblestones ink, and I'm going to use my big blending brush just to put that ink down really quickly. Again, I'm going to concentrate around the base here because that's where a lot of the shadow is going to be. Then once I'm happy with that, that's when I can come in with a smaller brush and just add some extra shading in around the edges here. Again, I'm looking for that sort of mix and match, that old English tea, afternoon tea sort of feel. You know, the ones like you can get the antique old tea sets, and there's lots of coffee shops and things that sort of really specialise, and their unique points are all the little English tea sets that they've collected and they like to mix and match. So that's the look I'm sort of going for with this one today. So that's the saucer sorted. Now we have the berries here, so these really do need to be quite vibrant. So I think what well, they don't need to be vibrant actually, that's a complete overgeneralisation. But what I think I might do, actually I don't want to put the rustic coral because they're sitting in front of rustic coral, aren't they? So I think I will go with the juicy pineapple. Okay, and be really bold with that, so they really do stand out. And what you could do actually, just tip into the edge of those with a little bit of the rustic coral. And I think what I might do is use the smallish brush and just tip into each of the base of those buds, just to add a little bit of contrast there. And what you can see that I'm doing is picking up some ink, and I'm just pushing the ink off the tapered end of the brush over the stencil. So there's not a huge amount of blending really going on, but it's just adding that little bit of colour there, and that is where you sort of start using the tools that Lisa has given us. Before I take that away, we have some foliage going on here, so I'm going to add some garden sage. Now the majority of the greenery I want to be woodland moss, because I think that's sort of going to match the real rustic feel of this. But we've got lots of foliage in there, and as we know, sort of everything in the garden doesn't all stick with one colour palette, so it's nice to add just a different shade of green. So we can take that away. It's coming together. It's coming together. So next stencil, so we're stencil number 5, we're halfway through. We can add some detail into this main bold flower, and I'm coming in with the yellow. Now you'll notice that I went straight into the centre, but that's because we have the centre of the flower is where there's a nice round bit. It's stenciled off with the stenciled material, so I do actually start on there and then work round, so I'm not actually going directly onto the cardstock, which will create an element like this which you won't be able to blend out. You'll find that really hard to blend out. So I am actually starting on that little bit of stencil material there, which does allow me to blend out that, so we don't have this sort of blob effect, for want of describing it another way. I don't know if there's a technical term for that. Maybe I've just, you know what I mean, you would have done that plenty of times, and we all do it. Well, it happens, doesn't it? You think, oh, I wish I hadn't done that. So I'm going to add some shading now to the other detail to these rustic coral flowers. Tone on tone again, so still sticking with my method of more ink on the inside of the flower, but when I take that away, you will notice that we do have the the details of those flowers showing, even though we are working tone on tone. You can change colour, particularly if you're using pinks and oranges. You can layer pink over yellow and yellow over pink. It does give you really nice corally colours if you want that two-tone effect. And what we could do actually, just in the centre of this flower, just introduced a little bit of a blush. See, I didn't pick up any more ink off the rustic coral, but I'm just working in the centre of that flower, which is just giving that a little bit of a different look. You can see how that sort of worked into there. So making sure, right, now what I have noticed when I've been stenciling this for, I always forget the base of the saucer. So I haven't forgotten this time. I don't know why, because I think I concentrate on the flowers more, and I always forget this tiny little detail. So you can have a little bit of fun. You can do this a contrast colour if you want. I think I have done, I know I haven't done actually, but what I've done when I'm on the blue one, you go a little bit darker. But what I will do is just on the outer edges here, make that a little bit darker. Okay. Oh, hi Natalia, how are you? Hi Lorraine. So we've got that there. I think we've used all of those areas on the stencil. So you can see how that's given that an extra bit of shadow sitting there. Don't worry about these bits yet. We haven't got to the areas where we've put the handle on for the cup. But you can see how the areas where I've gone tone on tone, we've been able to get the detailing in, and you see the flower buds there. Okay, so now we have our foliage. So I am going to come in with Woodland Moss, because this is the stencil where we add a lot of green. So this is really going to make it come alive. So I'm using one of the largest stubby brushes so I can really get a lot of ink down quite quickly. Again, I'm working from the sort of the centre outwards, so the base of all the leaves are going to be darker than the outside or the outer edges. Again, it just gives you that immediate level of shading without really having to think about it too much. So there we are. Now we have an extra set of leaves coming here, and I'm going to start off with the Woodland Moss. I shall perhaps make those that little bit darker, and then but I'm going to add a little bit of extra shading on that with the Garden Sage in a second, just to give them a different personality, a different look. So now I've just changed my brush. It's another stubby brush actually, and I've just picked up some Garden Sage, and I'm just going to work that into mainly the base. So we've got a nice dark base there, and work that onto the outside, and that's just going to colour tint that Woodland Moss, just so as it looks slightly different to the rest of them, if you can see there. So stencil number 8, we can bring in the handle for our brush, so, and the base of the teacup. So I'm going to pick up my blending brush because I want to put a lot of ink down here. So really work that in, and then work then into the handle. And I think now I've got that colour down, I'm just going to pick up a smaller brush so I can just add areas of shading in. So where the handle touches the body of the cup, we obviously want that to be a little bit darker, like so, and into the base. Now if you wanted to add a little bit of extra shadow, and I'll do this just to show you how versatile Cobblestones is, pick up a tiny amount, you don't need much, take off the majority of it onto the stencil material first, and just work those into the areas where you want just that extra bit of shading. Now you are adding grey, but it's not making the area look grey. so long as you use a small amount, then you can pretty much use cobblestones to highlight or shadow every colour that you have. So yeah, I'll just take that away, and before I do the rest of the stenciling there, you can see the detail. Oh, let me, my screensavers, come on, where are we? There we are. So if I take that away, you can actually see here where we've added the shading onto the cup, and just by using the cobblestones, which is it works in well because that's what we've used on the saucer as well. It gives you that extra shading. Right, so now we can come back into our foliage, and I think what I might do, I'm going to add another dimension of colour, not too much. I'm going to come in with a large blending brush and the Margarita. So I'm going to put a base colour of Margarita down, so I'm going to go really light with it, really, just so as we got enough colour there. And actually what I'll do, I'll put this down, and then just to give you an idea of how light I've gone, I shall take the stencil away for you in a second. Okay, so you can see how light I've gone with it there. These are the areas here. And then I can layer another colour over the top like Woodland Moss, and what that base colour of Margarita will have done is just changed the tone of Woodland Moss just slightly. So I'm not picking up a huge amount of Woodland Moss, I'm adding this gradually until I get the colour that I really want on the leaves there. So it's going to be a lighter version of Woodland Moss. Now what I will actually mention on this stencil, on stencil number 8, you have a couple of areas here and here. I'll show you in a second when I pick the stencil up, but these areas do need to be remembered, really, because the very first here you would have noticed that I've done that a little bit wrong. I added colour that I was adding to the foliage around the outside, I added it to the flower, and it made it stand out a bit too much. I wasn't being particularly careful at the time. Let's let go. So what we need to do here, we need to look at the colour that's coming through and add a colour that corresponds. Now it's a good idea to add the colour first, and then check underneath to make sure that you've got the right level of colour. So it's just these two areas which actually correspond to this larger flower at the front of the teacup, and it allows you to add some colour and the dimension that's showing you that a couple of petals have folded over. So you can see just here and here that if you went with a completely different colour, it might just spoil the image for you. So just be a little bit aware of that. Again, it's one of those things that once you've used a stencil once, actually, you'll soon remember, and you'll make provision for that each time. Now what I'm going to do, I'm coming with a smaller brush and some more Woodland Moss just to add to the base of these flowers. So we have a base of Woodland Moss, and then they sort of fade away into the Margarita there. And I think because this is such a nice arrangement, it's really not really important, it just looks really nice if you try and make the effort to add different levels of green on there. Again, not essential, because the way that Lisa's stencils, they are foolproof. But if you're at the stage where you're wanting to sort of experiment and just sort of play around with colour, that's just something to think about. So we can take that away, and you can see we have different levels of green sitting in there, which works really nicely. So stencil number 9 is where we add the details to the leaves and also some of the flowers. So again, just look at the colours that are peeping through the the apertures there, and just sort of be aware that of what it is that you're stenciling onto underneath. So amongst these leaf details, we do have some details that are going onto flowers. So that's why I've picked up the rustic coral, and just aware of, say, what is peeping through those apertures at me. So, but using a smaller brush, it just gives you that level of control that you can add different colours to just one layer of these stencils, even though we are working with quite sort of a lot of detail there. I'm getting all my brushes mixed up. Where are we? So back onto the woodland moss. So I shall use my stencil brush and add woodland moss to all these leafy details here, because I know that that will sit really nicely on top of all the greens that I've used. And then we have a couple of extra leaves that we've got here. I shall come in really dark on the woodland moss with. Okay, and don't forget your little leaf that we have hanging over the edge of the teacup there. There we go. So it's coming together really nicely. And we have one more stencil, stencil number 10. This is where we add the stalks onto the berries or the buds that we have here. So it's sometimes actually quite nice to go something a little bit different, and I'm going to come in with cobblestones on this. If you're using a brown, that might be quite nice, because just that contrast in amongst all these flowers just works really well, I think. So I'm going to add that in there, and then I'm just going to use cobblestones just on this little area here, which is a little leaf detail. Because I used a dark woodland moss underneath, the cobblestones will sit really nicely on top of that. So there we are. If I lift that up to you now, actually that's gone, that's really vibrant, and you can see just by using the cobblestones here, just adds that extra element. It's only a small detail, but it's a detail that sort of makes all the difference, I think. So yeah, I mean, that looks totally different to everything else that I've stenciled already today, doesn't it? And it really is just a case of playing with those colours. This could almost be autumnal, couldn't it? You could definitely make this into a Christmas floral arrangement as well, I think, if you get the colours right and you've done this main one in red. Although it's not necessarily a poinsettia shape, if you use the colours and different greens, it's definitely going to give it a far more festive feel to it, I think. So what I'm going to do now, oh, you like this one, do you, Mum? This one's your favourite? Oh, actually, yeah. Which one do people prefer? They're all very different, aren't they? And I think each time you do this, you're going to do something different again, which I think is the fun of all of Lisa's stencils, really, but this one in particular, because there is so much going on. Now I can die cut this, and obviously, as with all of Lisa's dies, they hug the design perfectly. And I'm using the magnetic mat as well, so if it's something that you are a little less confident in doing, use your magnetic mat to then line up your dies against your stenciled image, because what you'll find that if I lift that now, that die isn't moving. Okay, you see that, which is actually quite cool. Actually, let's do this. I can take away the Ultimate, so I don't need that on there now. This is the magnetic mat, which can obviously be moved. If I were to line this up without the magnetic mat, sometimes I concentrate so much that I sort of, I can get quite unstable, I can get the shakes, or it doesn't always line up properly. And then I do that, and if I lean over, I can easily jog that out of place you know. And sometimes if you're having one of those clumsy days as well, we all get them, you know, you can be there forever and a day and then it doesn't always work. But if you use your magnetic mat underneath, you find that so much more solid and far easier to line up like so, and say once I lift that die isn't going anywhere, and you know that you can then reach for your masking tape or anything and tape that down, and that's going to be held. So again, that's a really another great use, actually, a use which we didn't actually think of initially, with using the magnetic mat off of your Ultimate 2. So I'm just going to die cut that now. Okay, so I can pop that out of the die. Again, that's come out of there perfectly. It's a gorgeous image. You don't necessarily have to emboss it. You may not have the embossing folder. I think actually, in fact, it might be the embossing folder that isn't in stock at the moment. But you can use the image as is. That's absolutely fine. Or you can emboss. So again, I'm just going to emboss. And again, if it's something that's new to you, don't worry about the back of the folder. Now with this die in particular, this can only go in one way. So you just hold just the front of the folder and use your other hand to manipulate and maneuver your die into position. Once it's in position, then you can hold that and the front of the embossing folder with one hand. Not until you get to this stage, then do you need to worry about the back of the folder. So I'm still holding the front of the folder and the die cut. Bring in the back of the embossing folder, almost sandwich your hand in a way, grip the top, and then when you pull out your other hand, this hand is holding all 3 layers, and that's how you make sure that your die cut on the inside doesn't move. And whatever you do at all times, make sure that you've always got one hand clasping all 3 layers of your embossing folder. Again, particularly if you're new to this type of embossing, it can sometimes take a while just to know and find the best way for you in particular to line up your die cuts in the embossing folder. We'll all have our own ways of doing it. So I'm not saying that that is the way to do it, but if it's something that you are not super confident on, that might be a good way for you to start. So we can open up this folder now. Now I've been all fingers and thumbs today, and we can take that out of there, and that gives us the dimension. Hopefully you can see that. Yes, you can. There you go. Isn't that lovely? This might be one of my new favourite sets actually to use, purely because you can make it look so different each time you emboss and stencil. So I'm going to keep those there because I like to keep looking at them. They're really pretty. So we're going to go on to the base, the card base now. So let me just put the lids on these. I should just keep these in shot as well. So if you do want to take these, the list of these down, they will still be there for you. As I say, I will list the colours under the video a little bit later on. So to create the card base, I'm using the Garden Sage, or the Sage colour card again, and a cream cardstock, and I think they might both be slightly pearlescent as well actually. So for this I used the CURVY rectangles. It's a sweet little set actually. I think there's definitely a set that I'm going to be using a lot of as well. So I'll just show you the inside. It's a 6x4 set, so an A6 set of dies, nesting dies. I've used the largest of the dies to cut the card blank, so you can either work from an A6 card blank if you want to, or create yourself just from cardstock your 6x4 card blank. And I'll show you, I've left this around the outside just to show that I did actually work from a rectangle card, like so. There we are. And you take your largest die and you have the crease of the card at the top, and what you want to do is make sure that at least 2 of these points are tipping over the edge or extending beyond the spine of the card. If you want the dip to actually cut into the card and give you some detail, you can do, but you really must make sure. I'm going to pick this up now and take this away. You need to make sure that when I turn that over, you can see my finger through there. You can see that the tip of, or the corners of these cards are extending past the spine of the card. So when we open, you run that through the die cutting machine and it will cut a double thickness of card. So when you open that up, you have your card blank still intact. Now, depending on how much of this dip you've extended or not, you may have a tiny little die cut here, but that doesn't matter because you'll have both of these areas in complete contact, so you will still have an intact card blank. And I just kept this because I just wanted to show you just how much detail and how precision, what a precision cut Lisa's dies can create, even through heavyweight card. I think it's like 280 or the 300 GSM card, double fold, and it still gives you that level of detail, which I just think is phenomenal. So we have our card blank. Next thing you want to do is take all of these dies, the whole lot of them, and the easiest way I find to do this is to tape them all together, line them all up, and just add some washi tape across the centre so they are all in contact. And then you need to die cut this twice. So if you're making a 2-tone card, 1 tone of card, you'd run that through die cutting machine and die cut that as is, and do the same with the clear with the second colour of cardstock. So you end up with 2 sets of dies or die cuts like so. By cutting them all at once, you will end up with 3 frames like this, and the insert. Now, if you wanted this to be a solid die cut and not as a frame, then obviously you'd use just the largest die on its own, and the same goes with each of these sets as well. If you want this die to be a standalone die, you do need to use the insert, but you do need to add one of the frame dies as well to actually die cut it away for it to be standalone. If you use just this diamond section in the centre of a card, all you'll be doing is cutting out the lattice, which is a great effect in itself. But if you want it to be a standalone like this, you do need to make sure that you add the frame around the outside. Now, I did cut that twice. So I have myself a second colour of the lattice, and I've also cut this size die cut as a solid blank as well. So that's what happens when you die cut, or use those dies in that way. And what you don't use, stick back in the envelope, and it's there for you to use later on, because the chances are you'll be using one of your favourite coloured cardstocks anyway. Now, as I say, you can just decorate this up as a normal fold card. And what way did I do this? I actually cut 2 of those out, didn't I? So I need to have cut a second one. Right, let me rethink about this. So I'm going to use those 2 for the inside of the card. That one is going to be layered onto there. And I need a second piece of white card cut from that. Why does my screen keep going onto screensaver? There we are. Yes, so bear with me. What I can do, I need to cut myself a second layer using this size die. Get myself a piece of cardstock and I can cut myself a solid piece from there. Okay, apologies, got there in the end. So as I say, if you just die cut one of these frames on its own, it will actually give you a solid piece of cardstock, a solid die cut there, which is great to stamp onto, great to put sentiments onto. Yeah, as I say, you're familiar with using nested die cuts. So now we can start building our layers for the front of the card. So I wanted to use one of the frames with the solid white in between because I usually work onto a white background, but I thought I'd try something a little bit different today. So we can add our glue to the frame. Oh, just looking out the window, it's absolutely pouring. Deary me. Okay, so I'm going to layer that frame over the die cut, and I just love this combination actually. It's an off-white actually, it's not necessarily a cream, but with this sort of sagey colour. So we've got that layered, so we have a lovely die cut. We don't need the largest one because that won't layer on the front. And then I need, this is a smaller piece, so this will be the insert to that frame. And I'm going to layer this lattice onto the front of here. And actually this lattice is a really nice size, and it's easy to add the adhesive in between sort of the contact points of these diamonds actually, without having too much glue seep out from in between the design, which can be messy. So we can layer that up like that, and then I've used some foam pads just to 3D those. So we've got a bit of dimension going on here actually, so I can add foam pads like that. Oh. Okay, so we can layer that. Now you don't necessarily need anything on top of this because I think that's so pretty and classy in itself. Now this is going to layer perfectly onto the front of the card like so. Now so you can either do this as a normal folded card, or if you want to turn this into a, oh, what do you call that? My mind's just gone blank. That's Hazel barking in the background. Right, if you want to turn this into an easel card, there we are. We need to sort of measure down the centre and just make a score line halfway along, or the halfway point down the front here. So I measured this earlier on, it was 9 centimetres, so I need to make a score line at 4.5 centimetres. So that's going to create our easel there, like so. We can give that a score down, and we can now attach this onto the front like this. So what we need to do is just make sure that we add adhesive to the lower half of this layer here. And attach that like so. And this really makes a really different, nice, a different shaped easel as well. With these curvy rectangles, I think you're all going to love them. I think we're going to see those used an awful lot. So now we can focus onto the inside of the card, which is where we work in reverse, and we use a smaller, greener layer. Just move that up out of the way. So again, I'm just working straight onto the inside of the card. So I'm just going to glue this frame directly to the inside, like so. You can create this as a separate layer and add 3D foam to build this up also, but because it's working on the inside of the card, you don't necessarily need to do that. And then just as a contrast, I'm going to add this white lattice just directly to the inside of that green frame there. And because they're nesting dies, that will sit in perfectly flush like so. It looks really, really smart. So we have our easel card. We do need a stopper, and I'm using the sentiment for that. So I've just die cut the sentiment from the bold phrases. And just to raise that up a little bit, I will put that onto 3D foam. Now, just to be a little bit different, I'm going to put it on this side this time. We can just leave that sitting there. So that will act as the stopper for this card so it doesn't fall flat. And then we can just use our 3D foam, or we can just add our flowers directly to the front there. So let me add a little bit of foam, I think. Quite like the way that makes that look. Just add the 3 on. You would add on probably a little bit more. As you can see, when I do this, it would work just as a normal fold card in itself, but it also works really nicely as an easel card too. So just make sure that that sits straight. And you can see how that has really come together. We have 2 opposite cards actually, which work really nicely together, and those colours there. Okay. Actually really enjoyed making that. Actually, I'm so conscious I've gone perhaps a little bit over time there, but I think it's really nice for you to see the floral teacup in action. Actually see how many different ways you can use that. I mean, I've got a couple more ideas, so I may well use this on Thursday as well. Actually, there's I'm sure there's so much more that we can do with this. So yeah, I actually really enjoyed making that. I will spend a little bit of time now and get those colours up for you, so if you wanted to give that a go. But really it's just a case of playing and just using your favourite colours. I always think if you use your favourite colours, you really can't go very wrong. So thanks so much for joining me this afternoon. Do I have to use embossing inks? No, you don't, because the embossing that we achieve on these looks comes through an embossing folder. There's no need to use the embossing inks for that. The embossing inks are generally for heat setting embossing, and then you create a glazed finish over the top of that, and that is usually used when we're stamping. It can be used in some of these areas, but to achieve this embossed look, we use it's called dry embossing. That would be the difference between the two. You've got the heat embossing, which is a powder, and you melt the powder onto the ink, or we have the dry embossing where we use folders and we run that through a die cutting machine, and we use the pressure of that to actually create a dimension onto our die cuts. And if I turn that over there, you can see that we have that raised look. Before I run this through, then this would have been flat. There would not have been any dimension there. So hopefully that answers that question for you. Okay, so I'll leave that with you there today. Remember that Lisa has a Spellbinder shows today. I can't remember what time the next one. It might actually be 4 o'clock. So it gives you a bit of time to go and get yourself set up for that one if you're able to watch her. I know she had a couple of busy shows already. So I shall see you Thursday. Enjoy the rest of your week, everyone. Take care.